Hey guys, today we're going to talk about the Titan subclass builds I use, the stat distribution I use for each subclass, and the possible exotics you have for each subclass. Um, Once again, we're going to start with my most used one, which is the Striker. On this subclass, I use lightning grenades for the grenade. Pulse grenades are useless. Flashbang grenades are very situational. They can be useful, but they're nothing compared to the lightnings. One of the strongest grenades in the game. Use them. I'll leave it at that. For my jump, I use better air increased control. Because of increased control, it allows you to Titan skate, which makes you the fastest class in the game quite easily. Use it. Fist of Havoc. Generally, I use Shockwave just to kill anybody that's in front of me. This one is very preferential. Aftermath can be good in case somebody walks in, but generally against more skilled players, they won't. Death from Above can also be very good, so you can aim your super at people, especially if you like popping your super while you're in the air, which if you do with this is a bad idea. So depending on map dependent, I switch between these two. Mostly this one, but occasionally this one. For my melee, Stormfist, I use Overload. You use it reduces the cooldown so you have it more often, which works with my limited strength build, and hits with it have a chance to completely reset it, which is fantastic. Discharge can be fun if there's multiple people around you. Doesn't happen a ton in PvP, so I'd stay away. Amplify. I mean, it's a decent perk and it gets you your super quicker, but I still think Overload is better. So that's what I use. For my Titan Codexes, I believe I use the exact same on all three classes once again. Just Titan Codex 1 and Titan Codex 5 to get as much armor and recovery as possible to make your subclass as tanky as possible. You don't need much agility when you're Titan skating, so this really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. In the middle perk, I use Transfusion. So basically anytime I punch somebody, so I shotgun melee someone, I get my health back, which works fantastic when you have multiple targets. Headstrong can be okay, but I've never really found a situation where I would need this. Aftershocks, yes, you have longer lasting lightning grenades, and Aftermath becomes better if you decide to use that, but a good player will move out of your lightning grenade, so it doesn't actually help all too much. Final perk, this one leaves you a lot of options. You can run Unstoppable if you want, harder to kill while using your super. I know myself, quite often I get killed in the middle of my super for seemingly suspect reasons, but it happens, and you could use Unstoppable to make sure that doesn't happen or happens less. Shoulder Charge can be a useful perk, especially if you're running up against snipers who lack like a last word or some very strong close range weapon, but generally against a good shotgunner this is not going to help you whatsoever. And then we got Juggernaut, which is the one I generally run. It is my direct counter to hard scoping snipers. You come around the corner with a full shield on. You Titan Scape straight up to a guy. He has to body you once with a sniper to get rid of the shield. And I switch to a last word or try and get another shot off to kill you. Generally, unless he's very far back, he won't have time to do that, and you can easily get a kill on guys who decide to camp in the back using a sniper and not anything else. For stat distribution, I go Intellect and Discipline once again. Strength can be useful on this because Stormfist is very strong, especially because it actually does the most damage in the game at 155 for a charged melee, which is almost enough to kill somebody just by itself. But still, I think having a super and having grenades are more important because they have more utility than just the melee. But if you want to maybe put a little less intellect in, put a bit more strength, it could work. This is just the setup that I use personally. For helmet, there's the Helm of Inmost Light, which grants you extra perks on the the Striker Titan subclass. It can work okay, but the perks it gives you aren't exactly worthwhile in my opinion, so I stay away. I forgot exactly what the other helmet was for the Titan, but again, it's underwhelming, not really worth using. I'd stay away. Gauntlets, there's only one pair of gauntlets that you want to use for a Titan in general, and that's for the defender, so we'll leave that alone for now. For me, I either use the Twilight Garrison, which increases your mobility when you're using a shotgun especially, moving through the air. It helps you skate better, helps you change your direction to avoid different things. There's been multiple times where I can remember dodging grenades, dodging supers, whatever else, just because of Twilight. That's why it is my most used exotic for Titans. Armamentarium is always a strong option for giving you 2 grenades, so you could always use that if you want to. It is a good option. For boots, Peregrine Greaves, yeah, bonus damage with your shoulder charge, but I don't use shoulder charge, so I stay away. Stand-asides, they're basically useless, don't touch them. There's also the Dune Marchers, which were also added. They can be interesting, but I haven't enough playtime with them myself to decide if they're good or not. Just from what I've seen and what I've heard from other people, I wouldn't use it over the Twilight or the Armamentarium. Alright, let's go to the Sunbreaker second. Alright, here you got another couple options for your grenades. Fusions are very strong. You get a lot of easy kills that maybe you didn't really deserve, but still you get the kill. So it's always a good option. Incendiaries I generally use on some more of the open maps just because getting a stick is harder, while bouncing grenades off a few walls or down some stairs on possibly Widow's Court or something like that can help very much and can get you multiple kills. For the jump, once again, increased control, it's the only option. Hammer of Soul. I use Sun Charge. Forge Master can be good to throw your hammers, but they turn down the tracking and the damage or the blast radius on the hammers in recent updates since hammers were brought into the game with Taken King. While Sun Charge is basically a upgraded Blade Dancer Arc Blade super. You basically hit this and you're in the general direction of a player and you will hit them and kill them in one shot. Also, a good thing about hammers is, as far as what I can see, especially if you're using Sun Charge, your hammer will kill other supers in mid-super, so you can shut things down very easily, even with the damage-resistant ones. For my melee, I use Stoke the Forge. Getting a kill immediately recharges it, and again, you get your melee more often. Melting Point, PvE perk. I'm not crazy on it for PvP. Thermal Vent, not something I'd use for PvP once again. Doesn't see much utility. Once more, Armor, Recovery, and Agility, all the same on all 3 subclasses. Codex 1 and Codex 5. Agility is not really necessary because you can skate. Armor and Recovery are, because you survive more and then you recover quickly. I use Flame Seeker generally in my middle perk just because it's easier for hammers to hit. It tracks them slightly, not as much as it used to, but it still can be helpful. Explosive Pyre, PvE perk. Generally, if people are standing that close, the hammer will get them anyway. You don't really need to blow up one person to kill the other ones in the area as well. Fleet Fire is an interesting one, especially when using the grenades. It can be fun. Maybe something I could see myself using in the game mode like Mayhem. But for competitive options, I would stay away. Final perk, Cauterize. Hammers, melees, grenades, all of it heals you. Best perk, very simple, similar to the Voidwalker Embrace the Void perk, which is the best perk on that subclass. They nerfed this slightly, so it has a 5-second cooldown, I believe, on it. So you can't just chain your super hammers after hammers after hammers. Keep regenerating your health, which in my opinion was broken at the time. So it is a nerfed version of Cauterize, but it's still very strong. Simmering Flames, I don't hang on to my super very often when I'm a Sunbreaker, so I don't use that. Firekeeper, I'm very mobile with my super. If you stand still, you're likely to get team shot or sniped or killed in some way, so I wouldn't do that. For exotics, once again, there's nothing I would really use for helmet and gauntlets. Nothing really worth mentioning in my opinion. I would still use either Twilight Garrison or Armamentarium for 2 grenades. Those are your 2 options. Again, boots, nothing to write home about. I would stay away. I should mention there are the Immolation Fists for this. But again, it just adds 1 extra perk that doesn't do much. That's not a great perk in general, so I don't use that. For stat distribution, once again, intellect and discipline with as much strength as you can get while still focusing on these two. Your super and your grenades are much more important than your melee, especially when you're using Stoke the Forge and you reset your melee on kills, and it decreases the cooldown, similar to Fast Twitch, but not as much. Still a good option. So, intellect, discipline, minimal strength. Finally, we're going to the Defender, a subclass that I don't use very often, so I don't have specific armor for this. Magnetic grenades can be good. Stick people, once again, very strong. I don't generally like using them or going up against them, but sometimes you just gotta join the meta. Spike grenades, similar to the Night Stalker, are very strong, but in my opinion slightly weaker because you don't have access to the smoke grenade. Suppressors are, in my opinion, probably the best grenade for a defender, just because you have ability to shut people's supers down and completely remove them from the fight because they can't use melees or charge melees, they can't use grenades, they can't use your super, they can't double jump. It becomes very easy targets for you to deal with. Increased control, once again. Word of Dawn, you basically have your options here. Armor of Light, inside if you're capping a control point or you're on the capture point for trials. People can't come in without using a super. You will shut them down. Very good option. Blessing can have some fun times with. Just gain some extra damage resistance so you can outshoot people much easier. Good options, a little more situational than armor, so I would stay away from that somewhat. But Weapons of Light, I personally enjoy this just because you're able to kill people so much quicker with your weapons. I know, for an example, my Grasp, which normally does 23 to the head, which is a good amount of damage, which allows you to 3-burst people at optimal range, hitting 8 out of 9 headshots. With Weapons of Light, you go up to 31 damage per headshot and just melt people. I enjoy doing it, it's some fun. So that's generally what I use, but I don't use Defender very often, so I don't know a ton. For the melee, I don't use this in PvE very much. I have this for I don't use this for PvP very much. I have this for PvE. War Machines could be a good option. Gift of Light, not really good for PvP, doesn't do much. I personally would probably use Unbreakable, so it constantly recharges. Especially if you're using no backup plans, you just get your super or get your melee back or your barrier back again and again and again until it runs out. Titan Codex 1 and 5, once again, only options in my opinion. Bastion, Relentless, or Gift of the Void. Gift of the Void can be fun to get your supers back for your teammates, but not a lot of people will shoot the bubbles. Bastion increases the duration. Probably Relentless is your best option because Force Barrier is incredibly strong. It is even better than a pre-nerf Flame Shield. So that is what I would use if you're using the subclass, especially if no backup plans. Your final option, Untouchable, Iron Harvest. Don't use that in PvP. It's useless. Or Illuminated. Illuminated is more of a PvE perk. You could use it, but it's not amazing. While this one just gets you your super back, which is a good option. For stats, I don't have the armor for this subclass because I don't use it. Discipline is very important and strength is very important. I'd go 5 for strength, at least 3 or 4 with discipline, and then the rest in intellect. Kind of put these on even footing with one another. If you could get an ideal setup, I'd go 5, 5, and 2 for this. So similar to the Night Stalker subclass, but again, it's up to your own preference and how you play the subclass. I just know Force Barrier is probably your strongest option with the Defender, so you need max strength to get that as much as possible. For exotics, Helm of St. 14 is the only helmet that's really made for defenders. It is a PvE helmet. Do not use for PvP. It is useless. Gauntlets. I don't have a pair of these on the character currently. No backup plans for your Force Barrier. Every time you get a shotgun kill, your Force Barrier comes back, as long as you have a charged melee available. This is incredibly strong, and Force Barriers are the strongest shield in the game. You become a tank when you have a shotgun, you're getting kills with it. It's a very strong option. It's one that I'm actually thinking about trying out soon enough, if I can get the right armor for it. But if you have it, that's the exotic I would use for a defender. If you don't, Twilight's still a good option for your mobility, or armamentarium for the 2 grenades. Both good options. You can use either if you don't have the no backup plans. Don't touch any of the boots. They're not useful for it. Stick to either Twilight, armamentarium, or no backup plans. Only 3 options for the Defender subclass. Alright guys, that is it for the Defender. And that's it for the Titan, as well as the other 2 classes that I've already gone through. If you have any questions, be sure to ask in the comments, or come to my stream whenever I am live on Twitch. I'll leave a link in the description. I do trials carries every weekend to help people out. Generally I can get probably 30 to 40 people through per weekend. Offer free raffles. Come check it out if you'd like that, or if you just want to see some gameplay. I'm good with either. Thank you for listening to another one of my videos. Hopefully I will see you guys next time. Have a good one.